guilty. The other 4 charges levied against Huguely were found to be not guilty. The defense attorneys did seem to have a sigh of relief. But again, very little reaction from those in the courtroom, and perhaps that is because we don't know exactly what these sentences will be. That is going to be coming in the next few hours. It looks as though we are moving into a sentencing phase right away. That does not necessarily mean that the jury will decide the sentence tonight, but that they will just present evidence of sentencing. They will call witnesses to testify about George Huguely's character, possibly even bringing in his prior record. Those things will be introduced to the jury, and then the jury will again have to go out to deliberate on what sentence they feel is appropriate for George Huguely. Again, second-degree murder and grand larceny are what he has been found guilty of tonight. Bill?
And Katie, he faced first-degree murder charges. That was one of the 6 charges the jury could have found him guilty on. They found him guilty of second-degree murder. Does that have something to do we get an inkling of that in what the jury asked to have read back to them or to see again in terms of evidence they wanted brought back into the jury deliberating room?
Well, premeditation is obviously what they were stuck on, and that is the big standard for first-degree murder. They found him obviously not guilty of first-degree murder, and it's probably because they could not find enough evidence to support that what he did was premeditated. Now, the intoxication defense is something we've talked about at length in these past 3 weeks, that if you can prove someone was too intoxicated to premeditate a crime, that perhaps George Huguely had had too much to drink that night to be able to premeditate this crime, then that is a defense for the first-degree charge. That may have been what sealed the case in this. We're not quite sure yet. We'll have to interview the jury once they are done with the sentencing phase. Bill?
And Katie, the grand larceny, that involved the theft of the computer, which the defense had conceded as part of the trial.
Right. The grand larceny charge, the threshold is $200, and basically what was argued back and forth through defense witnesses as well as prosecution witnesses is what exactly was the value of Yardley Love's laptop. They brought in an owner of a pawn shop and another expert. One testified it was worth $150. The other testified it was worth $220. This was a used laptop, hard to determine the exact value of it, but the standard for grand larceny is $200. So it's clear that the jury felt him stealing that upon leaving her apartment that night was in fact worthy of a grand larceny charge.
And Katie, you described Huguely's reaction or non-reaction. Was there any other kind of reaction in the courtroom? Did the families react one way or the other?
Well, we expected Huguely to have more of a reaction. He had proved very emotional during that police interview tape. Lots of tears, putting his head in his hand, that kind of thing. Today, that was not the case. Huguely stood pretty stone-faced as these verdicts were read, and didn't really look to his family or make any type of gesture that would indicate any type of reaction. We also expected more from the Love family, who have been very emotional during this trial. Lots of tears, leaning on each other. Today that was not the case. It was pretty much a quiet courtroom as these verdicts were read, and I guess a lot of anticipation for them going into sentencing. Perhaps we'll see more after that.
And so you have heard now that they are actually going to go through with the sentencing despite a late hour right now. We're coming up on 7 o'clock, and the judge has said that he wants the jury to stay in and do it tonight because the prosecution is going to make a case that could take several hours. Is that right?
Yeah, from what we heard earlier today, the prosecution alone would take over 2 hours in this sentencing phase, and we expect the defense to take equally as long. So this could be 4 hours of evidence that the jury is going to have to sit through.
In charge.
That the judge gave the jury. Do you want to proceed with this, or do you want to start tomorrow? And it seems as though this jury is eager to get an answer in this case. They're eager to sort of put this behind them. This has consumed 3 weeks of their life now, and I think they're eager to sort of come to a decision and get this thing done.
All right, Katie, we're going to have you stand by for just a moment. I'm joined here in the studio by CBS 6 legal analyst Todd